Okay, cool. Thank you all so much for joining today. My name is Don. I'll walk you through some of the UX UI basics that I guess would be helpful. I hope will be helpful. Before we get into the body of the presentation, I'll quickly introduce myself. I really would like to hear a little bit from you all, what you are facing with when it comes to UX and UI. And then we'll get into the actual content. Before we get started, feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions. If you prefer to keep them for the end, that's fine too. We'll have a dedicated section of the presentation for that as well. So yeah, let's get started. Hi, my name is Don. I am, I guess, lead UX UI designer, currently at Oasis Network. I've been a UX designer for, I'm going to feel old, 14 years. And I've worked for SaaS startups, mainly in the US, GovTech, moved into Web3 about 3 or 4 years ago, worked on different kinds of Web3 products, NFT marketplaces, explorers, wallets, different kinds of dApps, etc. And yeah, really briefly, that's all about me, really. I don't want to make it too long. If you have any questions, feel free to message me afterwards as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have regarding me. Maybe, sorry, on the side of Web3X, who is there? Is it Kylie? Or okay. Hi, Kylie. Sorry, do you want to run through introduce every single one of the attendees and maybe they can introduce themselves one by one, or do we just go around the table?
Yeah, absolutely. So our project, it's called Scholar Chain. And essentially what we're doing, it's a blockchain system powered by AI agents, and it's for proof of proficiency, NFTs, and those are essentially biometrically verified academic and professional data. So it's just for individuals to be able to demonstrate their proof of proficiency in a variety of different subjects and everything, and then skill sets. And then those are used in admission scenarios, in getting jobs, and getting hired. And then I guess after introducing our project, do you want me to just talk a little bit about what we're discussing with UX and UI right now? Okay. Yeah. So actually, we have a bunch of user journeys and walkthroughs of our platform, and it's funny. Our advisor brought up on our last call, everything's in app form, right? So it's obviously like mobile images demonstrating what are your NFT credentials, how are you going to share them with prospective admissions officers or HR professionals, how you're going to set up meetings. And it's interesting because one of the things he brought up is it almost feels too informal, this kind of mobile-based version where everyone's always thinking mobile, more accessible, everyone's on their phone, easy to get to the users, right? So we're actually kind of considering, do we push this instead of focusing on mobile, push it onto a desktop application, because the scenarios you're using are NFTs are actually very formal scenarios, right? So it's not like you're just on the train going home or on a bus and you're applying for jobs and scheduling interviews. So we're kind of thinking, what is the best medium to push our users to use our platform? Is it mobile? Should we transfer it to desktop? But anyway, that was an interesting UI UX perspective we were reviewing in our last call.
That's really cool. It's really funny you mentioned that, Peter, because I think it was 2 days ago I saw a statement from someone online, and that really makes me curious about your persona or the personas that you have for your product. The statement was, my most millennial trait is that big purchases always have to happen on big screens.
Yeah.
And I wonder, and that made me think, because that's my mindset. I'm a millennial. That's my mindset, and I wonder if that is changing now. If the younger generation is more native to be like more accustomed to using apps and having the trust in apps. I don't, because I have the same mindset, but I don't have any valid argumentation why I think it should be on a bigger screen. I have no reason for it. It's just something that's in my mind. So it's really interesting you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's actually same with me. Just like, even if it's like a big proposal in an email, it's like I have it already, but I still want to look at it on my computer. It's funny.
Exactly. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
Maybe I can invite Zakion. Hey, can you hear me?
Would that be me?
Yeah, can you introduce about the project and the main questions about UX UI?
Okay, hello. My name is Chagyong in Korean, but I just rather go as JK because people have hard time pronouncing my name. And yeah, so our business is mostly about gamification. We are building casual blockchain games. And yeah, about UI UX, it is kind of like I am kind of like curious. Is there like certain things that we have to more focus on for the games rather than the application or the other technical apps, or is just as same? Or I'm not sure, because we actually like just outsourced the UI design for our gaming like last month, so it is almost complete as of the moment. But yeah, as come to think about it, I think game is relatively like you kind of have to like think less about UI UX, because a lot of benchmarking points are really out there with a lot of mobile games. So yeah, it is really interesting to hear about like how the UI UX goes, and I would like to know like what difference does the gaming UI UX makes. And yeah, thank you.
Cool. Sounds really interesting. I've never worked on any games myself, but I do believe that there can be quite a difference in the UX between like regular UX and game UX. It kind of depends, I think, on the situation that users are in as well. Are they just playing casually? Are they, are there high stakes for them? Are they doing it on the road? Again, just like with Peter, is it a big screen? Is it a small screen? I think that could impact the UX quite a bit for games as well. But we can dive into that later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then how about representatives from AppPlanet? Zach?
Yeah, hi. How are you? Sorry, I missed the initial part of the class today. I was having some of the network issues at my end. I'm not having a very much clear idea, but other than what the slide is. So I can start with that. The UI UX perspective. Initially we started with a single one-on-one fight game. So that was supposed to be simpler, like any other fight game. You can have some moves, weapons, and energy, and power, and that sort of things. But we were so indulged into the game, we started expanding it, and then we started towards metaverse, and we created a Olympus, the social arena where people can go into for some activities, and then again it went on starting, and then we brought in different mini games within the metaverse. So here now every game has like the different sort of controls, the different experience, and the different you can say kind of interfaces that we are giving over there. But most recently, we are working on a more challenging thing, which is creating the SDK, where the other players can, or the developers who are playing the game, can bring in their games into our metaverse. So we are still working on that, but it's quite a big challenge to make the game space that open that people can easily bring in, and
Parity.
we want to provide that sort of experience. So this is quite a challenge, and we are still working on it, and it's in the beginning phase right now.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like that could be a big challenge, the scalability and being able to adjust to every single solution there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then maybe I think about the last one. May I invite from Figcare Network? Are you here now? Abhishek.
Oh, hey, hi. I'm so sorry I jumped in late. I'm not. Can you give me a bit of context about it?
Yeah, can you introduce about your project and maybe you have about questions about problem about UX and UI?
Okay. Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Abhishek. Currently, I lead product and tech at Falcon. Yeah, like some of the most, like since we are, like building for multi-chain, I think UI is one of the biggest. I think typically the Web3 UI is one of the biggest problem. As a product guy, I always think of what is the best way so that user is conveyed on uh, the right steps that he has to follow for making the product easy. Like I always believe this, that product has to be very simple in such a way that it has to be intuitive, where you don't have to teach them anything. They should just get to know on their own. So this is where I come from. But earlier, since we were building it for solo ecosystem, it was quite easy to like kind of go around. But now that we are going multi-chain, trying to work with or try to get all of those chains information, so that users can kind of understand. I think this is where I'm facing quite a bit of issues. Like, how do we showcase or how do we help users navigate that, or confirm the users that they are in specific chain and they're doing certain transaction on specific chain?
Cool. Thank you, Abhishek. Yeah, that sounds quite relatable and familiar. Just the whole, just Web3, I think, offers just slightly different flows and experiences for users, especially less tech-savvy users. That could, pose a challenge for them, even to a point where they could drop off. And I think it's my personal opinion on most of these cases is to find a balance between what they're familiar with, so looking at Web 2 mainly, and educating them along the way as well, so they have a better understanding of what's happening and why certain things are happening. That's just a really quick answer, and I understand that probably doesn't solve anything right now for you, but we can dive into it later as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I would be happy to understand more into it. Thank you so much.
Cool. Kylie, did you want anyone else to introduce, or should we move on?
Do you wanna invite anyone anymore?
I'm easy. There you go.
I
Remy.
see from Remy. Yeah.
Sorry, I was unmuted. I was like talking to myself. Hello, my name is Remy. I'm also part of Falcon Network. I just want to add something about UI UX. When we was like working mostly in solo chain, and then when we go into multi chain, the most important also that is having issue with the user experience is the bridging between ecosystem. So the bridge sometimes it's not scalable. You have to wait like a month of time, and then some of like transaction get lost, and then you have to solve it manually. That is taking a lot of time for our developers to solve like certain transactions that is stuck in the bridge because of the not there's not like a way to bridge multiple ecosystem. That is something that we have to solve as well in terms of when we become equity chain. So the bridge is something that I want to mention that is also important in our project, having something that's scalable and also secure and able to transfer any data between different ecosystems.
Yeah, that makes sense. One example that comes to mind for me, I don't know if everyone is familiar with it, but they used to be called TransferWise.com. I think they're called Wise.com now. It's basically an, I guess, bank 2.0 or whatever you want to call it. It's an online bank. And I started using them quite early on. But as every single time you would convert currencies, it would always take a little bit of time. And what I really liked how they did that is they would actually show the process. Doesn't matter for most of the time for the users if that's actually what's happening, but you convey this idea that something is happening, that it's not stuck. It's, their action is not lost in translation. Something is happening. And that's, I don't think they have it anymore because their system's scaled up. They're quite a big bank now. So, the transfers go a lot faster. They're basically instant. But they used to do that. And that gave me a peace of mind of what was happening and something is happening. Whether that was true or not, that something was happening and the visualization on the screen was accurate or not, it gave me the impression that something was happening and gave me peace of mind that built the trust with the product, which I thought was very helpful. Okay, thank you, Remy. Anyone else?
CM Square, do you have any questions or want to introduce about the project Tudon?
If no one has questions, I'm happy to dive into the content.
Okay.
Is that okay for everyone?
Okay, I think I can move on to the next part.
Okay, cool. 20 minutes in, but here's the agenda. So the introduction, we already covered that. I am just gonna talk about the why, the importance of UX and UI design. So what is it? What are the fundamentals? And how you would apply it to your product in a perfect scenario. Obviously, this is my industry, this is my expertise, so probably I'm quite biased in a lot of things, but I work with a lot of startups as well. So I understand that, not everyone has time or the budget to actually dedicate the amount of resources that one would ideally need for UX UI design. So that's why I want to talk a little bit about the essentials as well, from my perspective at least. And then the last point are any questions from your side if they haven't been brought up along the way, and potentially any feedback like what we just discussed on the intros. We can dive further into these issues if you want. Okay, cool. Let's get started. Why? The importance of UX and UI design. We're startups. Ultimately, we're trying to change the world, but also make money, in most cases at least. I think this research from McKinsey is a good example. They did research into design-driven companies, and it turned out over a time span of, I think, 3 or 5 years, the design-driven companies outperformed other companies, or non-design-driven companies, by 1 to 2. So that basically means on the revenue part, you can see that they did up to 50% more revenue and a total returns to shareholders from up to 45% on average. So what does that mean, this increased profit? Where does it come from? It basically comes from the lower cost of customer acquisition because the experience is more pleasant, the decreased support costs because there's no questions, there's less issues. There results in better customer retention and therefore a bigger increased market share. why design? I noticed that a lot of Web3 companies and startups are very much engineering driven, which is understandable. But I'm here to advocate for not per se a fully design driven approach, but to balance it out a little bit more, because essentially the number of features or the types of features or how good the code is does not only result in how much or how much your user likes or dislikes your product. And especially this first experience offers this make or break moment for most users. And especially like, for example, with, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. Peter mentioned, like, especially like, I have some data that I'll show you, I think in the next slide, that is focused on like apps and downloading apps. People make almost decisions in the snap of a finger, whether they continue with the app or they don't. And this can be conscious or subconscious, but some of these reasons as to why users would like or dislike your product is, so for example, in bad cases, when you start the product, when you enter the product for the first time, it feels off. So just like, again, Peter suggested, the onboarding feels too informal for him. So it's too easy. It feels like it should carry more weight because it's something important. On the other side, what you often see as well, it's like, for example, it's too complex to get started. You ask too much data from me. You ask too many details from me from signing up. I have to go through 4, 5, 6 steps to just get my profile set up. You bore me. I don't think you need to get these details. I cannot skip it, so I'm out. And then the third point in this case that often drives new users away is that they don't get to see the value of the product fairly quickly on. So even if they get through the stage of signing up and their profile is at least to a point where it's like an MVP, like it's minimal acceptable profile, like not everything is filled out, but the essentials are there. And they can get started with the product, they don't see the value quick enough. There's no, and that's in the green part, aha moment. There's no moment where they can connect and see the value of the product that you're offering. If that takes too long, they are probably gonna drop off. So basically what I just said, and then the other way, if you flip it around, can I sign up quickly, for example? Is it easy to get started with the product? And do I see an aha moment come by real fast? Do I see the value of your product real fast? Those are things that are kind of like success indicators. So like I said, the first impression, especially nowadays with almost a 24/7 information overload, users have like an ever decreasing attention span. You see it, I'm gonna sound old now, but you see it, for example, with TikTok. Like the videos are quite short. People swipe along. You see it like, for example, you see TikTok videos or YouTube Shorts, and the videos are like 9 seconds long, and the title is just wait for the end. So that indicates that users already don't have the time span, the attention span to wait 9 seconds to see what happens in that video. I know this is very informal content, it's entertainment, but it gives you an indication of the time span, what is happening with society. So as an example, what we can see here, and I know these figures are a little bit outdated. I couldn't find anything more accurate, more up to date. Sorry, don't want to be pessimistic, but I don't think they've improved a lot. But as you can see, first point, 89% of smartphone users, their time on their smartphone is split between 18 applications. In younger generations, this has decreased from the top of my head, what I read, to 13 or 12 applications. So that means that the vast majority of the time that they spend on their phone is just for a select few apps. You see that 25% of the apps that are downloaded are just used once. And I'm probably a worse example here. I download apps, I check them out once. If it doesn't hit the spot for me, I don't just remove them from my screen or from my home, I delete them completely. I lose interest completely. And what you can see then as well is the 71% of consumers who use apps for the first time, they stop within 3 months of downloading them. So that retention rate is really difficult to keep up. You have to kind of like hook them in to make sure that they're coming back. And JK, maybe you have some experience with that from the gaming angle. That retention rate is, you have to keep them coming back, whether it's like collecting certain kind of rewards on a daily basis when you log in, or you perform certain actions to keep your, like with Duolingo, to keep your streak going. Those are retention techniques that could help you keep your users on board, basically. But there's a thin line. I know personally, I dropped off from Duolingo when I was learning Korean because the angry, sad-looking owl was just annoying me and making me feel bad rather than encouraging me to come back. So that I had it like a widget on my phone, and just seeing the owl become more angry and angry day after day just put me off. So on me, it had an opposite effect. So we kind of just covered this. How do you ruin it? How do you ruin the first impression? You're asking too much data from me. It takes too long to get started. I cannot see the value of the product quickly enough. I don't understand how the app works. There's no incentive for me to return to your product, etc., etc. These are the most common reasons for users to drop off. I keep saying apps, but I mean dApps, apps, any kind of product, basically, digital product I'm talking about here. So how can you avoid it? That's where UX UI come in, for a large part at least. What's really important is that I think, and I know I'm biased here, I'm the UX UI designer, so yeah, I'm going to be tooting my own horn. Design comes before development. Outline your product, create user personas, create user flows or the user journeys. Do you know who your users are, what they're expecting, what environment they're in? I think about 6 years back, I was working on a application, which was basically a ticket reseller. And we noticed that we were tracking the location of the users as they were using the app. And we noticed that users that were on the move never followed, or significantly less followed through with making a purchase. And only after we outlined more detailed personas and interviewed people to create these personas, we found out that most of these people are on public transport or they're in the car. Obviously, they're not walking, so they're moving faster. The buses here in Lithuania, the infrastructure is okay, but there's like the old town is bumpy roads. So the bumpy roads made the quite relatively small interface really hard to read. So after we increased the components of the interface, it was easier for users to navigate, and we saw a massive spike in purchases on the go because it was just easier for users to see what they were doing on the go. So then we get to the second point, test. That's something we didn't do at that time, and that's how we found out the hard way. We missed a lot of potential purchases that way. But test your designs. It's cheaper to test your designs than fully going through the development cycle, having it live up and running, and then having to test it, finding out that there's like crucial errors in there that you're missing out, and having to go back to the engineering team and fix it. In design, I'll get to the tools a little bit later, but for example, in Figma, you can relatively easy create visuals, prototypes, and that can even be premium templates, you know, just to convey the concept through wireframes, for example. It doesn't have to be high fidelity, pixel perfect designs all the way. It's just to test it, quickly iterate on it and see what works and what doesn't work. The third part, why I think it's very important to have design as almost as a starting point, at least before the development stage, is that you have everyone on board. Everyone is in the know. So whether it's potential users, your colleagues, stakeholders, potential investors, they have a clear visual, I guess, literal visual of what's happening and how it's going to work, which will create a lot more clarity. And again, kind of like with the first point, you can address any issues right away from the bat before you have to go and change like actually fully developed applications. The what? So we have UX and we have UI, but what is what? Ideally, design decisions are always data-driven. That's not always the case. I know that, especially with startups. There's no budget. There's no time for these kind of things. And so let's break them down. What is UX? What is UI? UX in general covers the analytical side of things, laying down the framework of a product, creating the structure, the conditional logic of the product. And I think you already had a presentation about creating personas as well. I'm not 100% sure. But this is, you can also kind of put this on the UX design, sometimes on the marketing, sometimes on the UX design. Are marketing personas the same as UX design personas? Not per se, but they can 80% overlap, I think. There's some things that you can elaborate on from marketing personas, which would make them function as UX personas as well. So, you don't have to redo everything from scratch. Then we have the UI design, and I hate it when people say that UI is just the pretty sauce on top of the UX, because I think there's a lot more to UI than just pretty colors and nice little looking icons. It focuses on the intuitivity of the product, the accessibility of it, and that's something I think in Web3 is still quite often lacking. The accessibility standards are often not met of the interface of your product. So if we look further and put this in a diagram, what is UX, what is UI? So there's certain things that overlap. Do you have to rely on empathy, understanding, design thinking, prototyping, and the collaboration for both of them? Yes, absolutely. Is color theory only UI? I wouldn't say per se, but most of the time it's part of the UI. Is, for example, the user research fully part of the UX only? Not per se either, because the user research can include parts of the UI, especially the testing and the iterating part of it. So, even though it's not completely overlapping, I think it could be overlapping even more than that we're showing here. I hope I gave you a rough idea of UX versus UI. So I'm going to make this a little bit interactive and ask you all 3 questions. Well, three questions. And I want you to tell me if this is something that is part of the UX or of the UI. There's no right or wrong. It's one or the other in the answers, but like I just said, they're kind of overlapping. So I was wondering if I would ask anyone what this font size should be for the product that we're using in our body text. Would you all put that on the UX or on the UI?
UI.
UI,
Yeah.
same.
Hold on. Cool.
UI.
Cool. Awesome. The second one, what fields do we show when a user signs up? Do we ask for their name? Do we ask
It's
for...
UX.
Awesome. Well, I spot that one. Trigger happy finger. Which types of users are we designing for? Okay, so that's kind of what we covered already, the UX. But like I said, it can also be UI. It's kind of like overlapping. Exactly. So let's go on. Sorry, I just hear a massive echo. I was replying to myself just now. Okay, I think it's gone. So how do we do this? I think there's different kinds of ways that you have design processes. From my experiences, there's no right way, for just a way that works for you. That said, I'm a big fan of the double diamond design process. So basically what you do is you take a product, you take a feature, a concept, and you discover it. You pull it really wide. You try to look at everything that's possible in order to get a full view of the landscape of the potential of whatever you're trying to design. And then you get into the define section where you kind of like converge. You start narrowing it down. What is relevant? What works? What doesn't? And at the end, so when you're in the middle of these 2 diamonds, you have a hopefully 100% clear scope of what you're trying to design. And then you can move into the more I guess the more visual part of the process. How can we design this? How can we solve for this? And then again, you diverge, you look at all the possibilities, and when you reach the top, you start narrowing it down. What is relevant? What works? What doesn't? This can be done through interviews, user testing, whatever works for you, whatever is relevant for you, for your budget, for your time frame, for the resources that are available. Because I understand that not everyone has people to interview at the snap of their fingers. So I think this is a pretty solid way of developing products and features in a relatively short time, but doing it really thorough. Design thinking is another design process that you can rely on. It's fairly similar to this, I would say. It's just that I've had quite some years experience with the Double Diamond design process, and it kind of like grew on me, and it's like part of my workflow now. So that's why I'm a fanboy, I guess. Broken images. I hate that. I don't like that. So when we're looking at the tools, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened with the broken image. When we're looking at tools, it's nice to get hands-on. When you are talking about the UX design, so creating the personas, creating the user flows, the wireframes, the prototyping, and actually testing. A lot of the time I get questions at least, what tools should I use? And I see in the community, the default answer is Figma. Figma is great, don't get me wrong. Figma is top of my list here, top of my friends list for when it comes to UX design, especially when you look at the community, because there's a lot of free content out there. You can, within Figma itself, you can easily collaborate, obviously. You can create, there's default user flow packages that you can download, but that you can work with. But Figma offers way more than that. It offers wireframe UI kits that allow you to wireframe really quickly. It helps you prototype. It helps you create personas off of templates that are for free as well. So yes, Figma is a top tool, if not the top tool, when it comes to UX and UI design, for that matter. Is it the only one? No, I wouldn't say so. I quite enjoy working with dedicated platforms for user research. For example, Optimal Workshop, Lisna. These are dedicated platforms that allow you to conduct user research, different types of research as well, that allow you to gather the data that is relevant for you. So whether that's one-on-one interviews, whether you are doing treetop tests, card sorting tasks, it doesn't matter, they offer it. And both Optimal Workshop and Lisna are, they have a free plan. I don't know how restrictive that is, obviously, it's like everything is paid, but there is a free plan. So you could get started with the basics on both of those platforms. And obviously Figma is for free. Something else that's for free is tipsforux.com. I'm sorry, this is blatantly, I don't know. This is, it's a website that I created. It's launching next week, probably. But it's officially, like publicly, is launching next week, but it's already live. So if you go to tipsforux.com, you can already see it. It's basically a website that covers UX principles. So that can be any kind of principle. It also UI principles it covers. And how I often use it, and this is my dirty little secret that I'm sharing with you, is when I get stuck on a UX or a UI issue, I reverse engineer. I start looking at UX principles and I try to see what applies. What is the issue, and what UX principle do I recognize here? What pattern do I recognize here that needs to be solved? And that 9 out of 10 times, that brings me back to a point where I have an understanding, a better understanding at least, of what I can do, how I can solve it. And my idea was to bring that all together into one place. And that's Tips for UX. So check it out if you need it, if you have a chance. Now we come to UI design. The UI design is basically iterating on the wireframes that you created, hopefully, and the prototypes. This brings, you can test them. After the testing, you iterate on them. You can move into high fidelity designs. maybe cover the responsiveness if that's relevant for you, and then test it again. Figma, in this case, is your biggest friend still. I think Maze is a good platform as well for similar tasks, even though it's not as comprehensive as Figma. You cannot design on Maze, but you can test very well on Maze. Then there's Envato Elements, and I put that in here because over time I noticed that the smaller startups already often feel the need for having completely custom designs. And even though that is noble and totally awesome to have, it's also very costly when it comes to money and time. So the reason for me to put Envato Elements in here is basically, I don't know if you know, but Envato Elements is a platform where you can download premium design content. So graphic design, logos, I think also even audio files, video files, but also UI kits and website designs. These premium templates were always something that a lot of designers look down upon. I don't know if that's still the case, but I just want to root for them because I think it's something that really can cut cost and time for you. You can always iterate on it just as long as you can. If you can download, if you can spend $20, $30 on a UI kit that allows you to ship your product a month or 2 months quicker, then I think that definitely pays off. And you can always iterate on it. But yeah, sure, it's not as personalized, but you saved yourself 2 months easily on skipping a full custom design. That probably doesn't even cover all of your edge cases as well that you might face if you would have designed it from scratch yourself. And the last one is MUI, Material UI. Also a UI kit. I think a limited version is available for free. It's basically a design system or a UI, extensive UI kit that allows you to start designing your product. What I normally do is, and this is maybe a bit more detailed, I work often for small startups. I work with the MUI starter kit, or sorry, the full kit, the full MUI kit, which is the UI kit. I create wireframes based on that. And as soon as the wireframes, basically the UX, if you want to put it that way, is 99% complete, I simply start updating that UI kit. The MUI design kit is very comprehensive. It covers basically all of the edge cases, unless you have something very custom. Like this is not, sorry, JK, again, this is not game design. But this is like, yeah, most products, it covers this in that matter. So then you just start updating the UI kit and your wireframes basically slowly but surely automatically update through the components and turn into a high fidelity design just by updating the UI kit, which is very time efficient. And you just have to do one look over after the hi-fi designs are basically automatically updated. And I'm usually pretty close to a complete product at that point. So MUI UI kit, Material UI kit, that makes more sense, is for me one of the go-to solutions to move fast and thoroughly. So what are the successes? What are the key indicators, the key success factors to good UX UI? I put it down into 5 items. Know your users. I think this is quite often underestimated. Try to see what your users do, what mindset they're in, where they are, what devices they use, not just their age, not their occupation. Yeah, that's interesting, but it's mainly marketing aspects, the level of education might impact the language that you might use. So it could have a big impact, but just equally, the location of a persona could have a big impact on how they use your product. Just like I said with the example where the users were traveling, increasing the size of the UI significantly increase the conversions. So have a better understanding, or have a good understanding. I'm not saying how, I don't know what you guys have, but like have a good understanding of who your users are and what they're doing and how they're using it and what the mindset might be and how familiar they are with Web3 in general. The second point, testing. Just keep testing and just rely on it. Iterate quickly, which is the fourth point. Test, measure, and iterate. It can be a really short circle where you just keep iterating, a quick loop, small tweaks, and keep going back, and show the people that you are testing with, the testers, show your appreciation, show that they are heard. Because from my experience, if you have these small loops, they give feedback, and you ask them to test it again, and then they might see that 1 or 2 points of their feedback were actually implemented. And from my experience, that really empowers, makes the testers feel empowered, and it will make them motivated to share more feedback with you. And it's like a snowball effect up to the point where it's like, you have to have a cutoff point, but then you can create bigger iterations. There's like bigger steps you can start taking after a launch, for example. The last point I would say is design consistency. I'm not just talking about having the same colors on every single page, but having the same patterns, so the design patterns. If there's a warning, is it going to be shown the same way every single time, or does the user get a toast pop up, or do they get a modal the other time? Having this kind of consistency makes it easier for you to maintain your product, but it also makes it easier for your users to feel that the product is intuitive. They know what to expect. So when you design a new component, for example, an error notification, think through all the possible use cases that it could occur in, and don't just try to design a new feature or like a new component, like an error notification, just for that specific situation. Try to think ahead and how it might impact future situations, future cases that this might occur, and how that is going to be scalable. Make sure it stays scalable. And this kind of consistency, I think, is very important and brings you more intuitive experiences and scalability, but it's also easier for you to maintain and less of a headache to go back and like reiterate and fix things. That was really shortly. There was another slide in here, but I think I deleted it by accident, which is basically Web 2 versus Web 3. I think I can quickly touch upon it. I think the main differences between Web 2 and Web 3 are the goals and the challenges that you are seeing in Web 3. Like there is a big discrepancy between Web 3 natives and the people that just are taking their first steps into Web 3. It's a very intimidating space for new users to be in. What is gas? What is bridging? Why do certain events have hashes and others don't? What is the value of my NFT? No one really knows until someone makes an offer and you sell it, really. Why shouldn't I keep all my tokens and crypto in a web wallet? Why should I store my mnemonic phrase? All these kind of things. So ultimately, Web 2 and Web 3 are not the same thing. For example, think about, I don't know, making a transfer with your bank, Web 2 experience. You put in the recipient, you put in the sum, the amount, and potentially a description. You send it and the person gets it. Easy as cake. But for Web 3, there's a lot more involved. There's gas fees. You have your address, which feels weird for most users, new users at least, because it's just an address. Yeah, you have IBAN, bank addresses as well, but you could match it with a person's name most of the time. And especially nowadays, banks tend to compare these two to each other. Sorry, so if they match the IBAN and the account holder's name, then it's a go. If not, you get a warning or it's even completely blocked. In Web 3, that doesn't exist. If you screw up the address, you screw up the address. You screw up the transfer, your money is gone. Most of the game. Well, I guess I've never encountered a case where that wasn't the case. So it feels like there's a lot more at stake. But if you design for trust, if you design for clarity, there is a way to get there. also for less tech-savvy users, I think. And I think the last thing, well, the last two things, and this is, again, the names. Abhishek, I think you had a valid point about that as well. There's a lot of things uncovered in Web3. There's no clear design patterns for it. In Web2, pretty much everything has been said and done before. So you can always, get some inspiration from somewhere else. You can draw inspiration from similar solutions. Web3 is evolving at a high pace. It's less mature than Web2, obviously. And that basically means there are a lot of uncovered use cases. There's undiscovered solutions left and right. And that leaves you with a big